So think about the last time you had to sign a really important physical document.
Oh, yeah, like a lease or maybe, I don't know, a major contract.
Exactly. Or even just, scribbling your name on the back of a receipt at a restaurant.
Right, which for most of us is just a total mess these days.
It totally is. At this point in your life, your signature is probably pretty messy. It might just be this unrecognizable squiggle.
Yeah, mine is definitely just a squiggle.
Right, but that squiggle actually serves a profoundly specific um, structural purpose in our society.
It really does. It's proof.
Yes, it is physical, biometric proof that you, a living human being with a mind and agency and intent, were actually present in that exact moment.
Right.
That messy ink is literal evidence of your thought process, committing to an action.
And we have essentially built the entire architecture of modern civilization on that exact premise, honestly.
Yeah,
The whole idea that marks on a physical or digital page represent the authoritative, verifiable presence of a human mind.
right. You see it everywhere.
Exactly. You see it in legal briefs, in medical diagnoses, in the essays we use to grade human intelligence in schools.
But, and this is what we're getting into today, consider what happens when the marks on the page are flawlessly formed.
Right.
Like incredibly articulate, perfectly reasoned, and yet there's absolutely no mind behind them.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
It is. Because when a machine can perfectly replicate the articulation of a human intellect without having the intellect itself, well, the written word loses its ultimate authority.
It really fundamentally changes everything.
Totally. So, today on the Deep Dive, we are exploring this deeply unsettling and honestly brilliant article from Psychology Today.
Yeah, by John Nosta.
Right. It's titled, When Writing Becomes Detached from Thought. And our mission for you today is to explore how AI isn't just, changing the speed of our output.
Which is how most people think about it, right? Just a
Right.
faster typing tool.
Exactly. But it's actually fundamentally altering what writing means as a metric of human consciousness.
Yeah.
And we're also going to look at why a 2,000-year-old warning about this exact epistemological crisis is suddenly and entirely unexpectedly coming true.
It's wild how relevant that old warning is right now.
It really is wild.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this because the sheer scale of the shift we're talking about actually requires rewinding the clock way, way back.
Yeah, all the way back to the mythic invention of writing itself.
Right, take us there.
So, to really grasp the magnitude of what large language models are dismantling today, we have to revisit a highly specific debate from ancient Greece.
Okay.
It's in Plato's dialogue, the Phaedrus. Socrates recounts this mythological story about an Egyptian deity named Thoth.
Thuth, right?
Yeah. And in this lore, Thoth is this brilliant inventor. He invented mathematics, astronomy, and crucially for us, writing.
The alphabet, basically.
Exactly. So he takes this revolutionary new technology, the alphabet, to King Themis of Egypt. And he presents it as the ultimate cognitive upgrade for humanity.
A massive upgrade.
Right. Thoth's pitch is essentially that writing will act as an elixir for human memory and fundamentally increase the wisdom of the population.
I love this because it sounds exactly like the ultimate Silicon Valley pitch,
Oh, 100%.
Like, hey guys, I've got this disruptive new tech that is going to seamlessly upgrade your citizens' cognitive capacity.
You're going to change the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, but King Themis completely rejects the premise.
He's not buying it.
Not at all. He argues the exact opposite, actually. Themis tells the inventor that writing will not deepen human wisdom at all. It will actively erode it.
Erode it. How so?
Well, his argument is that by moving knowledge outside of the human mind and onto a piece of parchment, people will just stop exercising their internal memory.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. He says they won't actually internalize concepts anymore. Themis warns that writing will leave people with only the superficial appearance of understanding.
Because they can just look it up.
Exactly. Because they can recite a text without having undergone the internal cognitive labor required to actually possess that wisdom.
This anxiety is so deeply baked into how we react to any new technology.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, think about when GPS first became ubiquitous on our phones.
Right. The panic over that was huge.
It was. And the cultural panic wasn't just about, oh no, we're not reading paper maps anymore. The fear was that we would lose our internal spatial architecture.
Yes, exactly.
We feared this kind of cognitive muscle atrophy, where we literally wouldn't understand how to navigate physical reality anymore.
Yeah, or think about the terror educators had regarding pocket calculator.
Oh my gosh, yes. The calculators in math class.
Right. The fear wasn't just that kids wouldn't do long division, it was that they would lose the underlying neurological framework of mathematical logic.
Right, that their brains would just get lazy.
Exactly. And King Thamus was describing that exact same cognitive atrophy just applied to the written word itself.
Wow. Okay, but did that actually happen?
Well, what's fascinating here is that, historically speaking, writing actually proved Socrates and King Thamus spectacularly wrong.
Oh, okay. So writing was a good thing.
Yeah. For millennia, writing didn't hollow out human thought. It became the ultimate vessel for it.
It preserved it.
Right. It preserved the scientific method, philosophical discourse, complex narratives. Writing did something miraculous, really.
What was that?
It allowed human intellect to decouple from a single biological lifespan and travel across centuries.
Oh, I love how you phrase that. Travel across centuries.
Yeah. And the deep irony, of course, is that the only reason we even know about Socrates' profound warning against writing
Was because Plato wrote it down.
exactly because Plato decided to write it down.
That is hilarious.
Right. So, for a very long time, the written word stood as the absolute triumph of the human intellect.
Okay, but...
But AI has just fundamentally rewritten the rules of that entire dynamic.
Which brings us to the core tension of Nosta's article.
Exactly.
Because if writing managed to survive the printing press, and the typewriter, the personal computer, the internet...
It survived all of that.
Right. Why does a generative AI model suddenly make this ancient Greek anxiety relevant again?
Yeah, it's a great question.
And from what I understand, the pivot hinges entirely on this concept of human struggle.
The friction. Yeah.
Right, the invisible friction required to generate words. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure. So for the entirety of human history up until about, 3 years ago,
Basically, yeah.
the written word inherently carried a human trace. Writing is not a natural biological function like breathing or speaking.
No, it's really hard.
It is. It's an incredibly difficult cognitive translation. The human brain has to take abstract, nonlinear emotions, lived experiences, complex logic.
All that messy stuff in our heads.
Right, and forcefully organize them into linear syntactic structures.
Into a sentence.
Exactly. And that translation process is incredibly lossy and frustrating. It requires judgment, revision, deletion, severe mental exertion.
Yeah, staring at a blank page is terrifying.
Totally. And Nosta points out that because of this friction, every piece of writing had a biography.
A biography. I like that. You mean like a biography of the thought process itself?
Precisely. Think about it. You write a sentence, you realize it doesn't capture your intent, you cross it out and try a different verb.
Right.
That micro-struggle means the final text belongs to someone. It emerged from a specific mind wrestling with a specific problem.
It proves you did the work.
Yes. That invisible friction is what granted the written word its deep psychological and literary authority.
Wow.
So when you read a brilliant essay, the text itself was the undeniable proof of the cognitive labor.
Okay, I hear that. But let me push back just a little bit here.
Sure, go for it.
Isn't perfectly structured, fluent prose exactly what we all secretly want?
I mean, we definitely crave the result, yeah.
Right. If I have to draft a highly sensitive email to a client or write a complicated cover letter, the struggle is the absolute worst part of my week.
It's agonizing.
It is. I don't want to wrestle with syntax. I just want the result.
You want it done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if a machine can give me the perfect articulate output in 3 seconds, bypassing the frustration entirely, why shouldn't I view that as a massive evolutionary upgrade?
And look, we flock to it because the utility is undeniable, the ease is intoxicating.
Right.
But we are making a fatal error here by confusing the utility of the text with the authority of the text.
Wait, say that again? Utility versus authority.
Right. When a large language model generates smooth, incredibly convincing prose in milliseconds, it completely severs the link between articulation and cognition.
Because it didn't actually think about it.
Exactly. The output looks exactly like a human mind was at work, but the foundational process that historically guaranteed a mind was present. The struggle, the judgment, the lived experience, all of that has been entirely bypassed.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because you'd think bypassing that frustration is a pure win, like I was saying,
Right.
but it creates this incredibly strange byproduct. It's almost like professional lip syncing.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. You can watch a performance that is technically flawlessly executed. Every note is hit, the timing is perfect, the presentation is gorgeous, but you eventually realize the vocal cords aren't actually vibrating. The physical effort, the vulnerability of producing the art, isn't actually happening in the room.
Yes, exactly.
And once you notice the illusion, the entire performance feels hollow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Nosta identifies this exact phenomenon as vacant fluency.
Vacant fluency. Wow.
Yeah, and you have likely already noticed this in your daily life, even if you didn't have a word for it.
Oh, I definitely have.
So much of the writing we encounter online lately, from LinkedIn posts to corporate memos to news summaries, it feels strangely empty.
It's just bland.
Right. It isn't grammatically incorrect. It rarely contains typos. It isn't even necessarily factually false.
No, it's perfectly fine.
But it feels deeply contrived. It feels orchestrated.
It basically has the exact shape of human thought, but none of the texture.
Yes. And that's because of how these models actually function under the hood. AI does not think in any human sense.
It's just math, right?
Exactly. An LLM operates by analyzing vast, multidimensional vector spaces of human language.
Which sounds incredibly complicated.
It is, but simply put, it's mathematically predicting the next most logical token or word fragment in a sequence.
Right, like an advanced autocorrect.
It is a statistical mirror reflecting the mathematical average of how humans structure sentences. It completely lacks lived somatic experience.
Whereas human writing is messy.
Right. Human writing is imperfectly imperfect. A human writer might reach for a metaphor and slightly miss, or, structure a sentence in a weird, choppy way that accidentally reveals their unique, idiosyncratic perspective on the world.
But the machine averages all that beautiful weirdness out.
It sands down all the friction to produce a polished, shiny surface with absolute zero depth.
Wow.
And this brings us crashing right back into ancient Greece.
Right, to King Thamus.
Yeah. This vacant fluency is the exact nightmare Socrates and King Thamus were trying to warn us about.
That is just wild to me.
Artificial intelligence is giving us the ultimate polished appearance of wisdom, the flawlessly structured argumentative essay, without requiring anyone to bear the cognitive burden of actually knowing the subject matter.
The implications of that are staggering when you really sit with it.
They really are.
Because for thousands of years, if you encountered a brilliantly constructed 20-page thesis, you knew unequivocally that the author had to be highly intelligent.
Right, or at least hardworking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, they had endured a massive amount of mental labor to organize those concepts. The document was the receipt of the work.
The receipt.
But now that receipt is entirely forged.
Yeah.
The text simply proves you have an internet connection and a decent prompt.
That's all it proves.
So if the written word is structurally compromised as evidence of a working mind, where do we go next?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because if text is fundamentally suspect, it feels like the only way I can genuinely trust your expertise is if I strip away the keyboard entirely.
And according to Nosta's analysis, that is the exact cultural pivot we are standing on the edge of.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because AI makes the written page inherently suspect, the search for genuine, verifiable human thought is inevitably going to move back to live human speech.
Wait, so we are going back to the physical stage. We are reverting to oral culture.
It is really the only logical defense mechanism we have left.
That is fascinating.
Think about it. Speech operates under completely different biological and cognitive constraints than writing. Live speech is inherently messy.
Yeah, we stumble all the time.
Exactly. It is structurally chaotic and spontaneous. When humans speak, we use filler words, we pause, we stumble, we double back and correct ourselves mid-sentence.
Like we're doing right now.
Exactly like we're doing right now. But paradoxically, that exact messiness is what gives live speech an undeniable presence.
Presence, okay.
It is a real-time, high-wire act of cognition that is incredibly difficult for a machine to convincingly manufacture in a physical space.
Because it's happening live in the physical room.
Right.
You can't edit it in post, and you can't just hit regenerate.
No, you can't.
If I'm sitting across from you, I can actively interrogate the idea. If you make a claim, I can interrupt and say, wait, explain that specific mechanism to me using a different analogy.
Yes. And then what happens?
You are forced to dynamically process the challenge and respond in real time. The cognitive load is visible.
You have to defend the idea with your actual mind, in the moment.
Right.
And the author suggests this is going to trigger a massive reevaluation of how society validates competence.
Oh, I can totally see that.
Think about our current systems. For generations, validating someone's intelligence or capability has relied almost entirely on the written record.
Sure. You prove your mastery with a written master's thesis.
Right, you prove your legal argument with a 50-page written brief.
You prove your employability with a beautifully formatted resume and cover letter.
Exactly. But we are very likely transitioning into a culture where those written artifacts become basically meaningless table stakes.
Just the bare minimum to get in the door.
Right. And true validation will rely almost entirely on live, unscripted performance.
Okay, let's apply this to the real world for a second.
Sure.
Say you are applying for a really competitive job, or you're a university student trying to prove you actually learned the course material.
Okay.
Are we heading toward an environment where handing in a stellar essay gets you absolutely nowhere?
It might.
Like, does the professor just glance at the paper, toss it aside, and say, "Cool algorithm, now sit in this chair and defend these concepts to me orally for 30 minutes"?
It's very possible.
Do our corporate meetings become these unscripted verbal exams because we can no longer trust the memo?
Well, this raises an important question about our vulnerabilities in this new era.
What do you mean?
Yes, the pivot to live speech restores a critical sense of immediacy. You can physically watch the human mind visibly at work, processing and reacting.
Right, which is good.
It is good, but there is a massive, historically proven danger in relying solely on oral defense.
Uh-oh.
We cannot allow ourselves to confuse presence with truth.
Oh, because smooth talkers exist.
Exactly.
We are basically reinventing the charlatan.
We are reinventing the ancient sophists.
Wow.
If you look at the history of human communication, a charismatic, highly confident human speaker can hypnotize and mislead a crowd just as easily and honestly, often much more effectively, than a large language model can generate a piece of fake text.
Oh, we have all been in meetings where an incredibly confident person brilliantly explains something they actually know absolutely nothing about.
100%. The delivery is flawless, but the substance is completely bankrupt.
So, pivoting away from text and toward speech doesn't actually solve the core epistemological problem.
Not really, no.
It just changes the battlefield.
Exactly.
We are shifting the ultimate societal advantage away from the person who can painstakingly write the most reasoned essay and handing it directly to the person who can speak the most persuasively and think fastest on their feet.
Yes. The underlying crisis remains exactly the same.
Which is, how do we verify that someone actually possesses the profound wisdom they are presenting?
Right. But the sheer fact that society is even intuitively sensing the need to make this pivot back to oral defense tells us something deeply profound about our relationship with technology.
What does it tell us?
It proves that on a collective, subconscious level, we are realizing that the written word alone is no longer sufficient evidence of human consciousness.
Wow.
The centuries-old anchor of text has slipped.
It is wild to realize we are losing the most reliable anchor of human history.
It really is.
For hundreds of years, if a thought was committed to paper, it carried intrinsic weight. Now, text is just cheap data floating in the ether.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for how you and I navigate the world tomorrow? Let's pull the threads together here.
Let's do it.
We started with an ancient Egyptian myth, recorded by Plato, where a king feared that externalizing our memory onto a page would destroy genuine wisdom and replace it with a cheap, shallow imitation.
Right.
And for a very long time, writing proved him wrong. It became the ultimate proof of human intellect precisely because it was so incredibly difficult.
The friction.
Yes, it required immense cognitive friction, biological struggle, and a real living biography behind every single sentence.
But the advent of generative AI has entirely stripped away that friction.
Completely.
We are now swimming in an ocean of vacant fluency. Prose that is structurally flawless, but totally detached from the human cognitive burden required to actually create it.
Right. The text no longer proves the thought.
Exactly. The squiggly signature of the human mind has been forged.
And because the text is compromised, we are almost certainly going to witness a massive cultural reversion back toward live human speech.
Yep.
Back toward the oral defense, real-time debates, and spontaneous, unscripted conversations as the primary remaining methods to verify if a biological mind is actually present and working.
It's a huge shift.
So the next time you find yourself reading an incredibly polished news article, a perfectly formatted strategic memo at work, or an eloquent post on social media, you have to fundamentally change how you consume that information.
You really do.
You have to start actively hunting for the friction. You have to look for that imperfect human struggle to determine if there is an actual mind behind the words, or just a highly optimized statistical algorithm.
We are having to develop an entirely new form of cognitive literacy, basically.
Yeah.
We can no longer just read the words on the page. We have to learn how to read the presence or the absolute absence of the human soul behind them.
It's a daunting shift.
It is.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on regarding this pivot back to live speech.
Okay.
If the future of proving our intelligence, securing our jobs, and validating our worth relies heavily on spontaneous, live, verbal sparring, what happens to the deep, methodical thinkers?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. What happens to the introverts, the careful researchers, or the people who simply require time to quietly process complex thoughts before they articulate them?
Yeah, the people who need that quiet time.
Exactly. Are we accidentally constructing a future where the loudest, fastest talkers inherit the earth, not because they are the wisest, but simply because their real-time performance proves they aren't machines?
That is a massive societal blind spot.
It really is, and it's something that we are all going to have to navigate as the very nature of human communication evolves.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you have to sign a physical document, take a moment to appreciate that messy little squiggle just a bit more. We'll catch you next time.